Hi everyone, I thought I'd do a quick video on what I learned about programming from taking a Shakespeare class. Now I know that sounds like a weird premise, and it is. It is a weird premise, and even the jokes you could make about it, where for loop, never mind. I'm not even going to go down the road because even the jokes you might make about it sound a little bit corny. But I actually did learn some lessons taking a Shakespeare class that later helped me to become a programmer. And so here's what I learned about programming from taking that Shakespeare class. My Shakespeare class was taught by probably the best, not probably, definitely the best professor I had, either as an undergraduate or in graduate school. Yeah, I did do that too. And this professor had a unique approach to teaching Shakespeare, and that was different from a lot of the literature professors, certainly different than a lot of history professors. And his approach was we would go and we would read the play first, right? So we were experiencing Shakespeare in this Pelican edition of Shakespeare first before he ever talked about the play. So we didn't attend the lectures and then read. We read first, and then we had the quiz. And so 70% of our grade was based on these quizzes that we would have, and we read about 8 plays in the course of a semester. And he instructed us to go ahead and read the play first, read all the footnotes, because Elizabethan English, if you've ever tried to read it, is not what I'm speaking right now, right? It was quite different. And so the footnotes would give you, okay, here's what they meant by this, here's what this means, here's the context for this thing we're reading. And we would read it carefully one time through. Then we'd go back and we'd read, whatever nonsense the commentator said at the beginning of the play, right? Because each one had a little introduction that was written, of course, by another Shakespeare professor somewhere. We would read the introduction, and then we would go back and we would read the play a second time. And he called it reading backwards, right? Because by now you knew what was going to happen. And you knew how the pieces of things fit together to get to the end result, right? And you could also read a lot faster because you were seeing the material for the second time, so you could enjoy it more. So we would do this, and then we would sit down and we would have a quiz. And after the quiz, the next several lessons, the next several class sessions, would be us talking about the play, right? And interacting with each other about the play based on having experienced it, not based on what he told us about it, right? And he had a saying that he used to say quite frequently. I took him for several classes, and he used to say this, and this is what I learned about being a programmer from taking a Shakespeare class. The thing that he used to say is, experience isn't the best teacher, experience is the only teacher. So what does that have to do with writing code? Well, I knew 10 years after taking this Shakespeare class, when I finally started to teach myself to code, that I had to get hands-on with it. I had to experience what the profession was about. I had to experience coding rather than just going for the certificate, taking the course. At the time, it was going back to school, right? There were no boot camps. I did it quote unquote self-taught. Obviously, I had resources. The book that I used was a C learning text. It's actually C Programming Step by Step by Mitchell Waite and Steve Prather. I still have the copy back there somewhere. And every day I would wake up and I would write a little bit of code out of the book. And then I would go to work. I was working full-time at the time. And on my lunch break, I would take out the book and I would read through whatever chapter I happened to be on. And I would try to absorb whatever was in the book. And then I would go home at night and I would have dinner. And after dinner, I would sit down and I would write for, another hour or 2 hours, whatever it was. On Friday nights, it tended to be more like 6 hours, right? Until I got tired and finally nodded off. But I would sit and I would work on the book and I would work through the exercises in the back. And I did effectively all the exercises, which is probably about twice as much as I would have done had I gone to school for it, right? And taken that as a course assignment. So the point was, I didn't just absorb what I was reading, right? I got hands-on with it because I knew from Shakespeare that experience isn't the best teacher, experience is the only teacher. And even at that, once I was done with that book, once had worked through several others, it was still a chore to get other people to believe that I could do it, but it was less of a chore than if I didn't know what I was doing. So there you go. That's how learning Shakespeare, if you have the right teacher, can help you become a programmer. So it's not just wherefore loop art thou Romeo. That's an awful joke. My goodness, I can't believe I finally got to the end and I hit you with that. All I can do right now is beg forgiveness. Thanks.